making correlations between how to create a prison that brings about excellent inmate outcomes and how to create an organization that creates excellent employee outcomes. But man, it really resonates, and the principles are part and parcel with what we practice today.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Founding Fathers Podcast. For those of you that don't know us, I'm Dan Cashman. This is Yaakov Klein. So together we are the founders of a company called Cashman Klein. You can find us at cashmanklein.com. In addition to being founders, and probably more importantly, we also happen to be dads. And so here on Founding Fathers Podcast, we interview other CEOs, founders, heads of companies just like us who also happen to be dads. And we talk about all the intersections between founder life and fatherhood, and all the many, many leadership lessons that come from both worlds. We are super excited to have an old friend, Kelly Petrock, joining us. He's the president of Lead Institute, a leadership and organizational development firm, the second generation firm started by Kelly's dad. And
Oh, wow.
Kelly brings decades of unique experience on how to change management, org and leadership development, performance improvement, and the psychology of human behavior. And so we're happy to welcome Kelly here today. And Kelly, thank you for joining us. You want to give
Pleasure.
a little background on your origin story, both with Lead Institute and as a dad?
Yeah, absolutely. The organization that I work within and run today was started by my father in 1976. So, from a founder's perspective and a father's perspective, I was both subject to that process and also, engaged in it myself as I took over the business. So my dad started it in 1976. I joined him right out of undergraduate college in 1989, and that was kind of the origin of that. He and I worked side by side probably till about 2011, 2015, and then he started obviously to enjoy his retirement and more of his time and what he'd done with his career for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of how it started for me. And then my children came along in 1997. So I was a fairly established OD practitioner, trainer, and facilitator. Then I started my family.
Interesting. Okay, cool. And I know your company, it has, in addition to being you and your father working together on it, also has a little bit of an interesting background, I think, in terms of your father and how he came to this. Is that correct?
Yeah, my dad started his career in corrections. So he in the 1960s developed and refined a process of rehabilitation that was really focused on shaping the way the institution treated inmates and inmate outcomes. So as opposed to looking at the inmate as the point of intervention and the thing to fix,
Mm.
he looked at the institution as the point of intervention and the thing to fix, which is, super similar to all the work that we do today. And he made quite a good living making correlations between how to create a prison that brings about excellent inmate outcomes and how to create an organization that creates excellent employee outcomes. And there was a little bit of shtick involved in that, but man, it really resonates, and the principles are part and parcel with what we practice today.
Yeah. What are some of those principles that you guys you saw in corrections that translated over to organizations?
The same things that we hold true today, is that if you're seeing things in the employee, your problem solving process doesn't necessarily start with the employee. It starts with the purpose, the process, the leadership, the context, the culture,
Yeah.
the alignment. And all of those things need to be questioned and understood and potentially addressed before we put the inmate in our crosshairs and start doing stuff to not the inmate, the employee in the crosshairs and start doing stuff to them.
Yeah. Well, it was a little Freudian there, but I mean, I'm sure you've come across some organizations where where maybe the culture felt almost like a prison.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Sometimes those are always great clients.
So I love that approach. So looking at not at the employee or the inmate first, but at the context and the purpose and
And then the other thing I'll just add to that Leadership and staff behavior is obviously a huge pivot point in that whole process as well. I mean,
Right.
from the employee and also from the inmate's perspective, their supervisor, their leader is the face of what's occurring. And if
Yeah.
there's little or no behavior change in that first kind of fault line,
Yeah.
then it becomes difficult to make anything else happen after that. And
Yeah.
and that kind of led to a lot of training work in our so the consulting business helped orient clients towards their challenges, and then the training work obviously helped to fill any gaps, particularly around the behavior of leaders
Yeah.
and what they needed to model, reinforce, and express to drive change.
And was that a hard realization for people? I'm sure they don't bring you in and say, "Hey, my leadership is broken, or the system I've created is broken. It's clearly the employees. Fix my employees." Is that a hard realization for people?
Sometimes it's a difficult dance, right? When the client perceives their problems as being elsewhere than in their own leadership environment or in their own leadership style, that can be a blind spot that can be difficult to overcome. A phrase that we use a lot is, sometimes the client just can't see around the next corner.
Hmm.
You can try to convince them about what the right path is, but sometimes you got to take a little bit of a walk with them down the wrong path, the one that you wouldn't advocate.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, a couple light bulbs go off, a relationship is developed, trust is established, and all of a sudden, the things that they thought weren't important and didn't need to be addressed as secondary effects, they see they become much more important and definitely need to be addressed. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a dance, right? How much do you assert at the beginning what the best path that is follow?
Yeah.
And then how much are you willing to yield and accommodate, knowing that, that it's never too late to do the right thing?
Just from an OD standpoint, I'm curious in your experience, have you ever sort of allowed them to take that initial approach as far down as they're willing to take it? Well, this must be the problem, or that must be the problem, or this person, and they're not taking ownership, or they don't have the self awareness. And they just, because you allow them that space to sort of go down it, they hit a point where they're like, oh, wait, I've run out of excuses. There must be something else here besides for what I initially pointed at.
That's a part of the play that you hope happens when you take that strategy with a client, that enough line spools out that finally,
Right.
they realize, "Oops, it's us." It's it's not everybody else and everything else.
Yeah.
I used to joke with my team that I was going to create a new training course, because you meet all the. I mean, it's with the clients as well. You meet owners and CEOs and founders and directors and senior directors and executives, and they're pointing to all the things that are challenging them. And I said, I'm going to create a course called Maybe It's Just You. Roll it out, and everyone has to take it. And it's just, maybe it's just you. And let's just start there.
Yeah, yeah, and, in the coaching work, that's obviously where it starts, is,
Right, right.
which is a nice place to start, 'cause, it does start there most often.
Yeah, I used to refer to I worked on a team, and we used to refer to it as like the mythical they, because like we would have these leadership training programs, and we have people in there that were directors, associate directors, and all the way up to the tops of the organization. And you would hear this kind of learned helplessness of, well, they won't let us do it, and they'll never go for that. And that sounds great in theory, but they won't do it. And you're like, well, who's the they, like, in this organization? Like, how much air is there between you and the top of this mountain? Because I think that they might be us, like everybody in this room. So I love again, just to keep pulling on that thread about, not looking at the employee first, not looking at the inmate first. How does that translate to fatherhood? Like when you're having a challenge with a child, that same concept of, people are probably quick to say, oh, this child is being needy, or this child is a problem, or et cetera. How do you translate all that over with children?
That's a great question. I think childhood is kind of a unique experience that, doesn't necessarily equate to adulthood, that well.
Yeah.
So children need room to breathe and grow and experiment and wander about and experience, and they need that kind of safe cradling from their family and their parents and their loved ones to let them do those things.
Yeah.
Um, because of how it imprints on them. And, as we know, when we're in adulthood, a lot of that imprinting phase starts to close down a little bit. I think in the early years, a degree of freedom, permissiveness, there still needs to be structure,
Yeah.
That's something that my dad taught me. That's something that we learned through our consulting practice.
Yeah.
There still needs to be structure, but within the left and right boundaries, a great deal of freedom and a lack of judgment.
Yeah, I noticed you talk a lot in some of your LinkedIn posts about authority and responsibility and autonomy, and how do you see that difference, like giving kids room to run versus giving employees room to run? How do you see those two things as the same or different?
I think the beginning of it for me is a little bit of structure, starting off with some parameters, and that makes everyone feel aligned and safe, whether it's at home
Yeah,
or at work, and using the reactions of that structure as teaching and learning points.
yeah,
And one of the things that my kids taught me, or at least that I found to be very easy with children and more difficult with adults at the time, was to be so curious about how they perceive things and how they think about things.
hmm,
And so, at the time of my twins' arrival, that was probably the biggest gift that they gave me, was just the gift of being really curious and interested about what's going on inside their little brains and how they came to their conclusions and how they perceived things, and just kind of pulling that thread just to see what was going on in there. And that's obviously something that I do in my practice as well with staff and with clients, is so curious about how you see that. Help me understand how this is so important to you, right?
yeah.
And that was something that became very visceral with the kids, because they're just so endearing, right? Not all adults are so endearing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with kids, it's more like, oh, like a wonder and awe in their thought process, versus with employees, you're like, wait, but how? But how did we get there?
My wife and I, we used a lot of structure in the house.
Yeah.
My dad was a warden of maximum security prisons. What I experienced growing up was you know, meaningful rules and swift punishments. And we left some of that behind, but the structure, the routines, the daily kata with the children,
Uh huh.
is what that structure is, right? It was just it was a great way to run a little household.
That's awesome. Yeah. Obviously, I cannot fully empathize with what it's like to grow up with a warden of a maximum security prison. Um, Given that journey, right? Like, we've interviewed multiple guys who, are similar stories to yourself, where they started the business with their dad, or they took it over from their dad. And I'm just curious, at what point for you did you say, yes, this is the direction I want to go? I want to work with him, versus going someplace else, or saying, he's my dad and that's his, and I don't care. Like, what was your thought process in that whole transition, that whole journey?
I really struggled initially. You know, I grew up under the mindset of go west, young man. Do
Yeah.
your own thing, blaze your own trail. And I held on to that for a while. My initial interest in psychology was to be a forensic psychologist and help solve crimes using psychology. I
Right.
learned that I wasn't a great fit for law enforcement or paramilitary organizations. So that was something I didn't know about myself before I started there. So, one key thing that really helped my father and I manage our transition was he assigned me a mentor.
Mm.
So I did not work directly with my dad as a journeyman in this particular field. I had a mentor for 6 to 8 years who I did
Wow.
almost all my work with exclusively, learned from him, shadowed him, and my father and I interacted relatively little, during that time. I mean, there was obviously brush by interactions, and I was an employee like everybody else, but I was really under the tent of my mentor, John, and that was probably the best thing and the saving grace for the whole kit and caboodle. If we'd have had to learn how to work together under the same framework that we fathered and sonned together, one of us would have spit the bit a lot sooner. But having that intermediary, having John there for a number of years, allowed me to mature professionally. It allowed a little disassociation between the father-son dynamic. I mean, it was always there,
Yeah.
but it wasn't the thing that we were navigating anymore. It was a thing. And by the time I came out from underneath John's umbrella, we were really able to enjoy the father-son aspect of working together.
Mm.
Really, really, being grateful for it, as opposed to, pushing a rock uphill with my old man every day.
Yeah. I love that approach. I said that's so intentional, like that you guys went with the mentor as opposed to being directly under your dad. That's so smart. Like, 'cause, you hear, we all know. I mean, Yaakov has 3 boys. I have 2 boys, and fathers and sons, they're the best friends and their worst enemies, right? And so, like, on the one hand, like, you could say, like, okay, well, I might coddle him too much or protect him too much, or vice versa. At times when years of personality and relationship and background could come to the surface and cause friction. And um, we both have a background in psychology as well, and I see you do too. And when you I think sometimes when you encounter organizations, at least for us, I don't know about for you, and you say, "Oh, I'm a psychologist," you get kind of a head scratch, or people almost kind of really recoil a little bit, kind of like, "Oh, are you analyzing me right now?" kind of thing. And obviously that's not the case. And I'm just curious, from a psychology standpoint, for guys running their own business, being the leader of their own team, running their own company. What are some psychological principles or concepts that maybe folks in that position are overlooking that they should be more mindful of?
I mean, no newsflash here. I think emotional intelligence is certainly on display, and how you respond to react to things, particularly when you have a vested interest and ownership in things, and you're at that level of kind of caring about how everything goes, and you feel like the organization has a little bit of your own identity on it.
Hmm.
Being able to have an air gap between your reactions to things, and why are certain things so important to you, and why are you against certain things, and why are some opportunities compelling. I think all that comes back to the owner CEO as really, you know, the requirement for some vigilant question asking about why am I going down this path and doing these things.
Mm-hmm.
Being being really intentional about those things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I love that. So the conceptually, I think most people will get on board with it. What's one key step that you think someone could take to boost their emotional intelligence or their journey towards better emotional intelligence?
Take your time to respond. Don't feel an urge to respond to things immediately, even though you could, whether it's a client response or an internal staff response. Give yourself time to be comfortable with what you think is going on and what you think needs to be done, and try not to make important decisions in the moment.
Yeah.
Um, I'll say this for myself and for our clients as well, but I've tried to get my kids to think like this too. Is we're so wired to immediately run to one perspective or to one answer for something. If you just simply pause and just ask at least one question, that's all you got to do. Just ask one question. It could be when, who, why, how long. It doesn't make a difference. That alone will pause you in terms of response and just give you a little more data so that you're not stuck in your own perspective, which we all tend to do.
Yeah, I think that's critical, because as an owner or a CEO, sometimes it's lonely there, and you need to give yourself time. And if you have a confidant or someone else that you can talk to and run things by, that's also, obviously, as you both know, that's a great check on the internal systems, right?
Yeah, the loneliness is interesting. I feel like I hear that a lot from guys that run their own business or are the top
Yeah.
of an organization. I was always struck by that, how often that would be a recurring theme you'd hear from people, just like a general sense of I'm alone and I have no one to talk to. And you're like, but you're the head of an organization. Like, you have a team, you have a company, you have people. And like, yeah, they're there, but they're not. Like, they're not the person I can't turn around and say, hey, here's all my fears, because then that
Right.
just, cascades down the organization of we're going out of business because, Kelly was worried about where the next contract was coming from, or Dan said that,
Right.
this client's going to leave us. And, and all of a sudden it ripples throughout the whole team.
It just feel whether it's real or not, it just feels harder sometimes to share your problems, misgivings, and insecurities with people when you're supposed to be in charge.
Yeah.
Um, it's just a little bit of a speed bump that either you have to get over and find a different way to engage people in what's going on with you, and or be very intentional about how you process your stuff.
Yeah, that is something that is really good about having a partner is I'm always sharing everything with Dan about all the things that are bothering me and I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I'll get into conversation with some of our clients, and they'll even say to me, "It's so nice that you have someone that you're close to that you could work with." And I agree, Dan. I've been surprised by the amount of times people have said
Yeah.
how lonely they feel. Meaning, I'm not surprised that it exists, but I guess that the frequency of it is
Yeah.
And I
surprising.
and I'd be curious to know how much that's just a
Right.
projected belief that
Yeah.
we're pushing out there. I
Mhm.
can't believe it's reality, right? I'm sure there are many people that would love to hear what's going on, and but it's the way I think we end up feeling at the end of the day, that
Yeah.
I have to hold this, I got to carry this bag, I have to be careful how I share this.
Yeah.
Just
I know a lot of people won't share things with their partners and spouses and things like that. They don't want to put that on them. I've heard this from multiple owners of companies. I was like, they say I have no one to talk to, and they'll explicitly say, and I don't want to talk to my wife about it, or I don't want to talk to my husband about it, because then they're having to shoulder all that stress, and I don't even know the half of it, type of thing. Let me just stay away from there.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think the only numbers I would share back at the house were, you know, what's the cash in the bank in the business and what's in a
Right.
receivable. And as long as those two numbers added up to something, that was, then we're going to be okay for a little while. But other than that, I didn't really report out on wins and losses other than that scorecard.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, I do feel like that's a recurring theme that we hear as well, particularly on like early stage founders or small companies, is just the importance of someone's spouse in terms of the partnership at home and how that facilitates strength of the business. And
Mhm.
I'd be curious your thoughts there, and particularly for again, people with small companies or people that are just getting started, or what your thoughts and recommendations are around all that.
I mean, I had the benefit of a kind of a traditional family, which was, I think, critical. Couldn't have done it otherwise. So that worked out very well for us. Having my wife be mostly at home with the kids, and as a consequence, I was mostly gone,
Yeah.
and that brought its own challenges. As busy professional, when the kids were little, particularly, you're coming in on Friday and you're leaving on Monday or Tuesday, and the family flow is going, and you're just kind of flying in there, and the family's like a stream, right? It's flowing, it's running, it's doing its own thing. It has been all week, and it's hard not to sit on the riverbank and just watch the family do its thing for 2 days while you get ready to leave again, right? A
Yeah.
little gobstruck on the side of the bank watching the family. It's a little bit more of a challenge to get in the river and get in there and do stuff during that brief period of time. So that was probably the harder thing to manage during those early years, was
Yeah.
just getting out of my own head, my own business, my own work, my own time constraints, and just
Yeah.
forwarding myself to the family during the time that I was there. But that changed after a little while, just with my own attitude, with how I used my time at home and what I was going to commit to do while I was at home. That made a huge difference in the quality of my life, as well as the harmony of my work-life balance. Just
Yeah.
just being able to put myself in the family position when it was not always easy.
So looking back on that, if you were starting over again, like what was the key lesson from that? What would you do different, early on, knowing what you know now?
Just recognize the signs of being there but absent at the
Yeah.
same time. If you're there and you're absent, you're not doing something right. You need to be there when you're there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's such a challenge, I think, for folks, especially now, like, in the your phone's in your pocket, and, everything is, there's so many different ways to be not to be absent,
It's a silly thing, but what I remember doing, because I remember feeling on the outside, sitting in the living room and having all this going on, and just getting on the floor, getting off the sofa, getting off the
Yeah.
chair, and just sitting on
Yeah.
the floor. And then
Great.
all of a sudden, all the little people come to you, and everything that you were thinking about, or whatever you were checked out about, is pretty difficult to hold on to once you move to the floor.
I love that.
Get down on their level.
Yeah.
Make yourself accessible.
No, that's really good. I mean, when you think of that, how that translates into the business in terms of, like Dan we always speak about doing the Gemba walk and
Yeah.
making sure, skip level meetings, walking the floors. It's one of the things, probably 50% of the coaching work, at least, that I do now is over Zoom, just because there are people, either the schedules don't line up or they're out of state. And I really try, though, at the beginning of every engagement, you want to get to their office, get to their factory, get to their place and walk it and see it and get on the floor with them. And I think that besides for it being good for you as a father, you as a professional, it's good for them, right? They see you on the floor, they see you in the hallways,
Right.
and building that trust, I think, is really, really important. I'm curious. So, because this was your family and your father's starting a business, you have the unique view of what our children have, right? Of having a father who's running the company who might be away, or you were saying he was there in the house. How did you find that dynamic between your mom and your dad as the spouse and the partner there?
My dad was pretty checked out professionally during my, 8 to 17 or something like that. And my stepmom, Nellie, she held down the house fort, and
Mm,
that model replicated itself when I
right.
became a father as well. That more traditional thing there.
I'm curious about exactly what you said. Growing up in a household where the mom's holding down the fort while dad's away, but you see that the father is working a business, meaning he's creating something for you, for the family.
Yeah.
So it's something that, sort of to have that balance. That's always curious to me. And then, these days it's a little different. I would think, Dan, I'm curious, Kelly, in terms of now that remote work is something, and post COVID, I feel like the flexibility is not only more available, but more expected as well, from the family. I mean, at this point, my baby is 9 years old, so I don't have like little kids, but they're still little enough. And you still think that, I could see it from them that they expect me to be accessible, expect me to be around. They're not, from 6:30 till 8:30 at night, dad's away, and that's
Right.
it.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a different dynamic, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, so my dad, he ran his own business too, and so it was similar. Where I've had to Yaakov's point, I've had the ability to both be the child to a father who's a founder and the father to children as a founder. And yeah, it is both a blessing and a curse, right? It is like it's wonderful. Like, when I'm home, like when I'm not, at a client site or something, most of the anchors of my day rotate around the children. And that's wonderful. Like, I love being able to spend time with them. For years I had a long commute, and I would be rushing out in the morning and coming in, an hour before bedtime, and that was terrible. Um, so now it's great to be able to spend all this time. The flip side is, yeah, exactly. Is they're children and this is all they know, right? And so for my dad, I mean, he would disappear for, weeks at a time when he was starting a business in a totally different part of the country. And so, it was just kind of like, all right, well, dad's not here, and I'll see him for a few
Right.
hours here and there. Now my kids are, mean you can't? What do you mean you can't pick me up from school today? What do you mean you can't, take me to karate? Yeah, well, sometimes I have other things to do.
Right. Right.
So it is funny the way that changes. Uh, it's a blessing, and it's also a challenge at the same time. So
Absolutely.
you talked earlier about structure and process and problem solving with the kids. Did you guys have like a system in your house? You have like a daily meeting or a weekly review or something?
We used lots of systems over the years. We had a chore board in effect for a number of years, where there was a calendar and there was a known list of chores, and the kids could place their chores on the days that they were going to do their chores.
Yeah.
And then depending on how well they did their chores, they could get first pick of the chores for
Mm.
the next week. So, I don't want to hold you accountable. You tell me when you're going to do stuff and do the stuff you say you're going to do. So we used chore boards. There was a period of time when conduct was an issue in the house, how they were treating each other, right? And
Right.
being helpful and responsive and kind. So, my wife and we identified a handful of things that we really wanted to see our kids do. And much like my dad taught me from his prison days, people can't wait. Inmates can't wait very long. Children can't wait very long for reinforcement. So we challenged ourselves. We gave them little marble jars. we put a couple lines on there, and every time they did something that was in alignment with helping or sacrificing or putting dishes away or not being waited to be told, we would give them a little marble and tell them what it was for,
Yeah.
and then they would go and run like happy little children and put their marble in their marble jar. It's easy to catch them screwing up and doing the wrong stuff, but we as parents need to be vigilant and catch them doing the right stuff. So
Yeah.
we had a quota of 5 marbles a day. We have to catch our kids doing these nice things because they're nice kids. They're doing nice things. Shame on us if we don't catch them. So after they reached a certain threshold of marbles and accrued some, some value, they could cash out and get a gift or get some money, or they could stay in the game and do like a movie night for the family or cash in for something. So the longer you waited, the more you could help other people with your prize or give your
Hmm.
prize to other people. A bunch of stuff like that we did. Never one system, whenever I go to a client, I see their whiteboard and I'm, oh man, that's an amazing whiteboard. It's so fantastic. Then I go back 3 months later, they changed it. I go, what was wrong with the old one? It was perfect. And that was the same way we were with our systems. It was
Yeah.
a good system, but you just put in the next system after a little while.
Yeah, I love that twist on it, like that they could earn for themselves or earn for others. It's not just like hey, wait a little longer and you get a bigger prize for yourself. It's wait a little longer and you get a bigger prize for all of us. That's creative. I love that.
And a lot of that comes from my dad and what he did in prisons. In most prisons, solitary confinement is for when you do something bad.
Yeah.
Um, Now, there's a lot of good reasons why an inmate would want to go to solitary confinement, be alone, and be removed from population. There's a lot of good reasons for that. So you had a lot of incidents of bad behavior, people doing bad things to get put in solitaire on purpose so
Mhm.
that they could be removed from. And so my dad just made solitary confinement something you could ask for, and you could even rent it out if you needed it. You didn't have to do anything bad to get solitary confinement. Just let us know, or rent it out.
No, that's so smart. I love that. Kind of really understand the why behind the behavior, right? Because it'd be easy to just say like, "Hey, this guy's a problem inmate," right? And my older guy, naturally he ebbs and flows with jealousy of the younger guy, right? And so, definitely see that a fair amount with him, where sometimes there's this just bizarre streak of behavior that you're like, why are you doing this? And then you're like, oh, well, now I'm upstairs with you and I'm not downstairs with him. And, he's smart enough to know, like, okay, well, if I just go ahead and push a few buttons here and there, dad's gonna be upstairs with me, having a one-on-one chat with me and figuring this out, and not downstairs with my brother. And so yeah, there's got to be a better way to shape that desire. So Kelly, just got a couple last questions here. So guys starting out on their journey with a company, what's the best advice you ever got from someone else that you would pass on to someone starting their own company?
I like what is it, Collins's hedgehog principle.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember all of it, but the confluence of your passion, what you can be amazing at, and what can drive your revenue engine. I think, as you move into your business, if those three bubbles aren't rocking for you, if viscerally you don't feel the alignment in how your skill set and your passion can drive revenue, then yeah, maybe push the pause button for a minute, or at least make that the first part of your endeavor, is to experiment to figure out how you can bring those three aspects into confluence and overlap.
Yeah.
Now, the best advice I ever got raising kids, and I have got a lot of unsolicited advice, and not all of it's been great, but I did hear some advice from somebody. It was a participant in one of my leadership sessions, and I was talking about my children during the program. And he said, you make your principal installments on your children from years 0 to 11, and you live off the interest thereafter.
Hmm. Oh, I love
And I thought, that's brilliant.
that.
That aligned with what I believe. Make your installments, pay all your attention, lean in heavy, because after about 11, your ability to influence that equation drops off precipitously. You make all your principal installments early on.
Yeah. Oh, I
That's
love that.
great.
That's so good. Yeah, definitely gonna steal that. I hope anybody watching steals that. And then finally, folks who want to hear more from you, learn more from you, how can they get in touch? Anything coming up that you want people to know about?
We do amazing work in strategy formulation, particularly engaging our clients in getting connected with their vision and their strategy. We do an amazing job helping clients look at their culture, stepping back from it, seeing the patterns, seeing how their culture may support or resist changes like lean implementations, and then teamwork, particularly at the leadership level, as you guys know, how aligned they are, how well they work, how they deal with their egos, their level of commitment, durability. Those are things that we do very well. And you can find, us on the web. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's easy to find everybody now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All
Awesome.
right.
Kelly, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kelly.